Hi there. So yeah, before we get started today, I just kind of wanted to give a little trigger warning for some of the content. We will be discussing the film Black Swan, and there are some themes of suicide, self-harm, and eating disorders that we're going to discuss. So if that is something that is triggering or might be upsetting to you, please feel free to skip this episode and catch us next time. Thanks.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Analyze Scripts. I'm Dr. Katrina Furey, a psychiatrist, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague,
Portia Pendleton, a licensed social worker.
We are just going to dive right in. Today we're talking about the 2010 psychological thriller Black Swan. There's so much to talk about, so we just got to dive right in, Portia.
Oh, so I saw this movie in theaters when it came out.
I think I saw it a couple of times.
Yay, like dance movie.
I think I went with some of my dance friends.
Yeah, it was supposed to be, I actually don't think I knew that it was like a psychological thriller.
Did you think it was going to be like center stage?
Yes. Yep.
different.
I was expecting it to just be, kind of like toxic ballet culture and like, some relationships.
Scenes,
yeah. So I went with my, at the time, boyfriend and now current partner, and I think he was traumatized from it. He was very confused, and I left that movie feeling like gross.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I can remember it. I
remember you told me when I recommended this, you like shuddered and you were like, well, I'll have to watch it during the daylight hours.
Yeah. I don't know. And maybe, we will talk about this a little bit, like if it's because it like hit on stuff for me. But, oh my gosh, there were just so many moments that I feel like physically make my skin crawl and make me feel so uncomfortable and, like shudder almost.
Yeah. I mean, I think like a lot of it's a beautiful movie, period. I think it was nominated for a bunch of Oscars. I think Natalie Portman won an Oscar for Best Actress, rightfully so. But even like the physical stuff, like her scratches and skin peeling and all of those things.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think it's meant to make
and
you feel that way.
It,
Yes.
Like I feel like I'm very like
visually
impacted, I guess, as in previous episodes I talk about vomit a lot, like seeing, actual vomit like makes me queasy. But, like I work with people who self-harm and like, we've all seen, I'm sure, especially you in your training, like scars and like that, or, even fresh cuts,
wounds and things like that.
Like that is just not bothersome to me at this point, but seeing someone peel their skin back like that literally makes me shudder.
Yeah,
which I feel like
it's meant to. But I think it's totally meant to there. When she's like, when she's washing her hands in that scene, I think we all know what we're referring to there. But so to give a recap of the plot, if you haven't watched it in a while, so this movie focuses on Nina, who is like prima ballerina, I think in like New York City Ballet. Yep. It seems like they're implying. And she really wants to be the lead dancer, the principal dancer in her company's production. She sort of goes back and forth with another character, Lily, who's played by Mila Kunis. A lot to say about her. And then her mother, Nina's mother, is played by Barbara Hershey. That dynamic in their home is like fascinating. I'm sure we'll get into it. And then there's like this gross director, Tomas. We'll talk more about him too.
And then I totally forgot about her, but Winona Ryder makes an appearance as Beth, like the retiring, maybe on, being forced to prima ballerina.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so I believe this movie really amazingly predicts Nina's first psychotic break. Is that how you interpreted it too?
Yes.
Or did you see other things?
No, I mean, I don't know what else I would call that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think throughout the movie, like we see the really like the final push, right, into that
psychosis,
break.
Yeah.
But I have many questions, as I'm sure many people do. It's like, how did you get here and why? Like, so I think the movie just starts off right away. We see this kind of relationship with mom. it almost feels a little bit like Mommy Dearest.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. 100%. It feels real icky.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Nina, she looks like she's meant to be like in her 20s, I would guess, right? Like she alludes a couple of times to Beth being like 27 or 28. So she's like too old now to dance. So I think she's in like her early 20s, maybe mid 20s, like maybe she's getting there. But she's like so infantilized.
Yeah, very childlike.
Like her room still has like pink flowers everywhere. Her mom like tucks her in, brushes her hair. What did you think about when the mom fed her breakfast of a big old grapefruit and the egg white?
I was like, oh, that's, pretty spot on.
Yeah.
I think for like, I'd say, right, like toxic ballet culture to kind of remain very, very small in your body, which is, I think, kind of a crazy feat because the amount of work that it takes to be
a ballerina.
I mean, you are so strong,
I know.
even though you look so small. Like
it's crazy, yeah.
I mean, your entire body physique is just muscle,
right,
and then strength,
right? But I thought it would like depicted it so perfectly that they're so thin. They're like scary thin. Like I felt uncomfortable watching them. I remembered back then they had talked about, Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis had talked about how much weight they had to lose, and they are already petite, period, like just by themselves. But they both, and I looked it up after I rewatched the movie, lost like at least 20 pounds following these crazy restrictive diets. And on the one hand, I'm like, that's really accurate for the roles they're playing. On the other hand, I feel really gross about that, just like in our society. And it makes me worry for them that they were able to sustain that, to play these roles and train.
Right.
Mila Kunis said that she survived on carrots and cigarettes, which is shocking, But yeah, I mean, they both looked so gaunt. And there's that physical therapy scene where someone's working on Nina and you just see her ribs and it's just like, oh, it makes, again, talk about feeling like visually uncomfortable.
Right. I mean, it's like you're all kind of bones. And so even, kind of from stepping away from the story a little bit, like when she gets dropped on her knee, like her ankle kind of, snapping at one point, like
I was so worried about her bone density.
Just even from being a dance, I guess, specific ballet, like I feel like I have a lot of physical, how do I say this? Like physical trauma, right? Like from the act of dancing. So like a fall, bleeding toes, or like I have knee problems.
Right.
And so I think a movie like this for me, again, like really hits me in like a physical sensation.
Yes,
like when she fell on her knee.
what that feels like.
Oh my gosh. Like my body tightened up. I know exactly how that feels. Her getting the physical therapy, like you were just saying, like
pulling her ankle.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's brutal, the amount of training and pain.
Yes.
That people at this level, I do believe and will say exists. Like
100%. And I did appreciate in this movie that they really did show that, especially like the dancers' feet, because of course, when you're on point, like your feet are disgusting. You have all these blisters, your toenails break. Like there's such physical trauma to your body and your feet. And they really displayed that in this movie. And I also was so curious, like, all of the ballerinas' outfits, like their leotards, the shrugs they were wearing, like all this stuff is just so accurate. And I also feel like, now looking at it as a physician, I'm so worried about all their labs. Like they probably all have labs suggestive of anorexia. They're probably all freezing all the time.
They probably all have amenorrhea, so they are not getting their period.
They probably, every time she fell, I was so worried she was going to break something because I bet she has osteoporosis. Because she's not fueling herself. Like how gleeful she was at how pink that grapefruit was. So perfect. Like such a good scene. But like she clearly has an eating disorder. And then when her mom gets her the cake, what did you think about that scene and the mom's reaction?
Oh, I mean, so I thought it was interesting because I feel like the mom on the one hand really wants her to be this like prima ballerina. And I feel like,
what the mom could never be, it sounds like, because she got pregnant with her.
And so she serves her typically, because again, she's treated like a child, typically like pretty low calorically dense food. And then it's like you get her this
Huge
cake for a party
cake.
size. You're cutting her this big piece. Nina
To
has
celebrate,
this reaction.
right, to celebrate that she was chosen to be the Swan Queen.
Yeah. So Nina is like,
Oh, that's too
oh, I
big.
want a little smaller. And mom immediately is like so hurt.
Yeah.
And puts it right back on Nina. I'm going to throw it away. Makes Nina feel bad. Nina then apologizes and then, eats it anyway. I'm sure she probably threw it up later.
I'm sure.
But it was like a very strange moment besides mom's like mental health issues, but just like you want your daughter to be this person. And this let me back up a little bit. I felt like through the movie, the mom comes across like as mommy dearest, like kind of like abusive, weird, like manipulative, narcissistic.
And we did see that dynamic, remember, in Center Stage with that ballerina and her mom.
That's interesting to...
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like, I forget that ballerina's name, but like that mom was also really involved and like calling around and also involved. It's really similar. And I wonder if that's like, again, part of the ballet culture, if that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so mom, like in some ways is trying to protect Nina. And it's almost like at the end, she sees Nina like literally falling apart and losing her mind and like doesn't want her to go through the role. Obviously, then Nina feels like, then she ends up going to perform. That is later in the movie. But I thought that was different. At first, mom comes across as just really, really inappropriate.
Yeah, just again,
the paintings of Nina all over,
so creepy,
like obsessed with her.
Well, so there's some things in the movie that I'm sure we'll get into more, that I really wondered about Nina's perception of it. And I wondered, are those paintings of her or are those examples of her hallucinating?
Yes.
But certainly the mom, it's just weird. It's just weird. They're very enmeshed. Mom like strips off her clothes and brings her to clip her nails because she sees her scratching. It's just icky. It gives me the icks. It's a really dysfunctional relationship.
Mom like emerges from the dark of the apartment at times. And, it's always like it's startling. It's scary. It feels like the mom is coming in to be mean. And I think, you hit the nail on the head with what I was trying to allude to is like, it's hard to know if mom is really as bad as she is, or if it's Nina's perception paranoia, right? Like all kind of coming out throughout the movie. And I think initially it seems like really clear. Mom has all of these issues. She's not a good mom. She's like, making Nina to be this way, in my opinion. Then by the end of the movie, I'm really questioning, was she really that bad? Like, was Nina, was she even really in the room? Was she really even coming in? I mean,
right. 100%. Like when she finally got that stick of some kind to like keep her door shut. When she was masturbating and turns over and mom's right there. Like those kinds of scenes are just like, like no boundaries, like, but yeah, I think it's a really interesting depiction of a toxic mother-daughter relationship. But again, I think like for Nina's story and thinking about her first break, so we know that first psychotic breaks most often occur in that time frame for women, like between your 20s and 30s. For men, it's a little younger. It might be like late teens into your 20s. And again, so you're like, okay, so let's rewind. And how did she get here? Like you were saying. So she has this relationship with her mom where she feels like she's supposed to be this prima ballerina her mother never could be. And she even said that thing to her about like, at one point Nina's like, what career to her mother? And her mom's like, well, I would have had one if it weren't for you, kind of thing. That's really toxic. But just thinking about like the stress of that relationship, there's no dad in the picture or even alluded to. So we don't even know like what kind of stress was there? Like, what kind of stress was Nina under as a child growing up with this huge expectation on her? Who even knows if she wants it? But, I mean, so that's like A. And then B, we see that she seems to have a very neurotic personality. And I'd love for you to speak more to that, especially in your line of work.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like, like it's not a causation, but it's often a correlation, right? So it's, neurotic, a little bit type A, I'd say, or a lot type A, like obsessive compulsive. You see, and I think again, like there are a lot of rituals that kind of come out in, just like I think the job, right? It's like, tying your point shoes a certain way. It's like you do all of these things that are very ritualized and rich and rigid. And I think it's like a perfect opening for, I think there's a lot of ballerinas, in my opinion, who probably do have OCD, probably are perfectionistic.
100%.
And I think all of these traits and symptoms really kind of do fit hand in hand with eating disorders, both bulimia and anorexia. I think you see quite frequently in dance, self-harm. I think it's just, for whatever reason, it breeds just this type of person.
Yeah.
Chicken or the egg.
Right. I mean, I think if you think about ballet, like to take ballet classes, how many classes Nina has taken over the course of her life, probably from the age of like 3.
Yep.
Ballet classes aren't the most exciting thing to do.
Very repetitive.
Very repetitive. Boring. It's always classical music. Again, it's beautiful, but it takes a certain kind of personality
to tolerate it.
To tolerate that and to do it to such a degree.
Right.
Like these people are taking like 7 classes a week.
Right.
This isn't like just once a week. Like you're doing it.
And you've done it for years at that level.
Exactly. And to be on point. Point hurts so bad. I remember I was so excited to finally get on point, and I was not the best ballerina, so it was like late high school. And as soon as I did, I was like, I hate this. Like it hurts so bad. But to keep doing it despite the pain, again, sounds like such a parallel with like anorexia, like being able to keep depriving yourself despite that physical pain.
And ultimately, it's sometimes getting a little bit of like pleasure from it. I feel like there's 2 ends of the spectrum. It's either like you're kind of numbing everything, or you can kind of develop specific to anorexia, like a level of euphoria around starvation. And that's, I think research says that. So also just fun fact, anorexia really is the rarest eating disorder by far.
And it's the most fatal mental illness.
Depicted though. So I think when we think of eating disorders, we think of anorexia, but that's not true. Anorexia is more rare. And like you said, like it has the most fatalities. So, and there's really a certain type of profile that can maintain anorexia. Typically, people might start restricting and then kind of lean into bulimia because you cannot do it for that long.
Right. Your biological drive to eat, like, kicks in for most people.
Right.
If you can really push past that, like, whoa.
Right. It's not I don't want to say normal, but it's really not part of like a general experience to be able to do that. That's why we get all these signals. We get hangry, we get irritable. It's like our body's way of like cueing us to eat.
Right.
And most people don't feel good doing that. So it's like there's this like flare. I think it's a lot of genetic research. It's like what makes some people be able to develop and maintain this disorder for sometimes really sadly like decades.
Right.
And why, can't others do it? And it seems like there is some sort of a gene marker that makes like extreme hunger desirable almost.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And it is really opposite of our human nature. Our human nature kicks in and we need to survive. So food and water and shelter is all a part of that. So it's like when your body is screaming at you that eating is dangerous, it's like that is so interesting that you are able to kind of like
I'd love to like scan their brain. Yeah. And see like the neural networks are just like flip-flopped.
Yep.
Like I wonder if there is some sort of like, if there's so little like dopamine, which is like one of the pleasure neurotransmitters, like what's their dopamine like? Is it like, does it bump up the longer they go without eating? Yeah, it just sounds so fascinating.
Right. Like everything is controlled. And you even see with Nina, like that night that she kind of goes out on the town with Lily, that like that's not something that she has ever done.
No.
She does this routine, she practices, her life is very controlled.
Her life is all ballet and her mom.
Right.
That's it.
Right. And I think that is a similar profile again with someone who has really classic anorexia, is like everything is controlled. There's you're not even going out to like a concert and having fun. Like
you can't.
It's
you can't
stressful
go out to eat.
go.
You can't.
Yeah.
Right. It's like your world is so small and just totally consumed by this. And then I think like with such severe malnutrition, your brain just isn't functioning.
You're more anxious, you're more depressed. And I always, kind of say to patients, like, you don't have depression first. Like you're not, you probably never would have self-harmed. You never would have wanted to kill yourself. I think it's about even with death rates of anorexia by medical complications, heart complications, and suicide.
Yeah.
And I think, it's like most of these people without anorexia would not have these other disorders that arise, right? Because your brain is kind of so low functioning.
Right. 100%. I feel like it's interesting, I think, our different perspectives here, Portia, because you do this all the time. That's why I'm like fascinated to talk to you about this movie. But I see it come up when people are like, I think I have ADD. And they come to me and they're like 90 pounds. And we have a totally different discussion, like you're talking about. And I'm like, no. And also, again, it's like, no, you can't focus because you have no energy source in your brain. And I would never start a stimulant on you because your heart is already compromised. You're already so thin. It's just really fascinating. And I did think this movie did such a good job, and Natalie Portman did such a good job just portraying that obsessive pattern, that you see in this character and probably in a lot of ballerinas maybe. And I think it's also the culture. Like the ballerina body type is so unattainable for like 99.9% of the world, I would imagine. And the technique you need, the turnout you need, all of it is so hard. And so you have to practice so much to get there. It's just this like unattainable standard and goal that just feeds into breeding this perfectionism, this obsessiveness, the rituals, the diets, the everything to like get to this unattainable point. And I think we see Nina have a psychotic break under that level of stress.
And I think too, what I think is really hard is like, while you are performing oftentimes, in a core, so in the corpse, which means like with the group of people, you're not the prima ballerina who's in the lead roles.
You're all the other swans.
Right. And it's like that still at a level like the New York City Ballet, American Ballet Theater is like the highest of the high, but it's still, it's so uniquely like an individual sport still, right? Like you're not like on a soccer team where it's like, you're passing back and forth and like, the team is celebrating. Like it's weirdly very individual, even though you're so performing together. It's wildly competitive. And I think again, like
feel like a failure.
It just breeds this type of person who chooses to go into it, who sticks with it.
Right. To this level. Right. And again, you're so right. Like that's such a blow to their self-esteem. You see Nina like come home and just like fall apart with her mom when she thinks she's not going to be picked and she's tried so hard and she's still not good enough. It just feeds this like almost, I want to say narcissistic, but in the like, I'm never going to be good enough way but you stay in it and you're just like, it's like you're flagellating yourself like over and over. Yeah. You're just in this culture where you never feel good enough. Oh my gosh. And then she does get the role, but after the director has assaulted her.
Right. So, we see Tomas. He seems like he's the, artistic director of the company. It seems like he has had a history of a relative with Beth,
and
who
probably
is, again,
all the prima ballerinas.
Right. It seems like this is probably a kind of toxic, abusive, sexual assaulty environment.
Interesting to watch it now, post Harvey Weinstein in the Me Too movement compared to back in 2010.
And so he is kind of, I think, like trying to test her. That's my impression of first, right? He's like asking her all these questions. He invites her back, is asking her if she's a virgin, is asking her if she has boyfriends. And again, it's like there
I think
could be a
after,
conversation.
I think that was after she got the role.
Yeah.
But even before then, they were maybe dancing and he was trying to seduce her, remember? And then he
kisses her, she bites him, which she thinks is now it's done. She lost the role. She's not going to get it. But for whatever reason, the bite, really got him
like,
going.
Oh, you can
and
be the black swan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then she still thinks she doesn't get it. She thinks Lily. No. She thinks
another person,
a random girl,
some random girl,
got it because she says, "Oh, congratulations!"
I thought
she's
that girl was
away.
Maybe Michelle Trachtenberg, but maybe not.
No, I don't think so.
No, not Harriet.
But
looks like her.
Yeah. No, that's a good call. And then she ends up getting it. Goes to the bathroom, calls her mom. You see her at times like. I don't think that time she went in to throw up.
No, but other times when she's feeling a big emotion, you see her go to the bathroom. I thought that was really smart.
Yep.
depiction of bulimia?
So it would be anorexia. And
anorexia
Portia. So how would
you
type?
Okay.
Because I'm assuming that she is not binging. So you have to binge in order to have bulimia, which is actually, like, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people only associate the purge with bulimia.
That's an important
many
distinction.
people with anorexia do purge. For example, they might have something that they believe to be a larger meal. That would be, I would say, a subjective binge. So
like
someone
two
might come
whole
in,
eggs rather than an egg white.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they're going to throw that up. Versus somebody who is really, truly engaging in a binge behavior, which is about consuming like 3,500 calories in kind of around 90 minutes in secret. You almost are dissociative. You're eating a lot of the same food. So it's not like you are going up for your third helping at Thanksgiving and you're feeling really uncomfortable.
Right.
You have overeaten.
It's also not like you're sort of mindlessly grazing at dinner time while you're prepping dinner. So 3,500 calories in 90 minutes, that's a helpful
So it's really
framework.
rapid. You might be eating like loaves of bread, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going up and taking multiple balanced
pieces of
items
cake or
on your
something.
plate, bringing them back. It would be like consuming an entire party-sized cake.
Right.
And then having a bag of donuts and then having a bag of plain untoasted bagels. It's like we're going through the drive-through like 7 times, multiple drive-throughs. So I think a lot of people kind of say that they binge. I think a lot of, and maybe are serious. Some people, I do think we throw that word around a lot.
Yeah.
But bulimia really does require a binge.
I've always, again, I don't have as much experience with eating disorder, so this is really educational for me. I've always wondered, like, how do you quantify a binge?
Yeah, and so I think that's more of like a research criteria, which I think is helpful.
That's helpful. No, it's super helpful for me to know.
Yeah, and then so I'd ask someone like, did you have an objective binge, which I just described?
I like that.
Or did you have like a subjective binge? Same thing just with binge eating disorder. So people are then not using a compensatory behavior. So they're not self-induced vomiting. They're not taking a laxative. They're not then restricting.
Or they're not over-exercising.
Correct. They're not over-exercising. But I think a lot of people who do show up with binge eating disorder often do restrict. So they'll maybe restrict during the day at work, intentionally or unintentionally, and then they go home and then they might consume like a large quantity of food. There is a little bit of difference between night eating syndrome and binge eating disorder, but I think we think of restriction only in anorexia.
And like that's it. Right. Like I think like you've told me before, that's super rare to have that form of anorexia where all you do is restrict.
Right. Most people have purged who have anorexia at some point.
Purging being the self-induced vomiting, which we see depicted in this movie, but also laxative use, over-exercising. There's a lot of different ways of purging. So like your patients you have who meet criteria for the restrictive type but then run a lot.
Yep.
Would you say that's the purging kind of area?
Because oftentimes if they are able to, or if they are unable to exercise to a certain degree, they might then restrict more of their food intake because they're not able to compensate for it or have a lot more anxiety.
Yeah. And this is
food.
where, oh my God, I just so worry about their hearts. And we've talked about this a lot, just, not in the podcast, but...
I mean, again, these are people who have heart rates in the 30s.
Right.
Like,
and they're like running half
20s.
marathons. And you're just like, how are you doing this? And again, these ballerinas, like this is what they're living in too. And it just makes me so nervous. Like if I strapped an EKG on them, I would have a heart attack myself.
Because restriction, does impact your muscles,
yes,
right? And your heart is a muscle. So I think, as someone's just wanting to lose, as so many diets say that will work, that we're just, kind of taking the fat away. Restriction doesn't work that way. Your body doesn't, know that you just want to target this quote unquote problem area right on your left hip. It's like, no, restriction takes from everywhere. It takes from, the gray matter from your brain.
Yes.
We need fats for our brain to work well. So seeing Nina's diet, is really concerning. And again, she has a really high output of exercise.
Right?
So she should be fueling, throughout the day, protein shakes.
She should be eating like Michael Phelps.
Yes.
Like it's just wild.
But then when we think about ballet culture, right? So I noticed the costume design piece. So in most ballet shows, like you tend to do them more than once. So the Nutcracker, Swan Lake,
You have to fit in that costume,
Giselle.
right?
So they keep these costumes, especially the core.
Yep.
And they might refresh the prima ballerina's costume, but like they try to use them over and over again.
So,
and if you are
fit in it.
bigger than the last dancer was who was in your costume that you are getting, that is so upsetting and shameful. Even if somebody is not directly shaming you, it's like, we have to add this piece of fabric on, or we have to make a new one.
Or you're not in. You're not in the show.
Right.
100%. I agree. I thought that was like,
Like there is pride in a really sick way that when you are smaller and they need to take it in,
like
and there's shame and guilt when you are too big and it won't clasp.
100%.
Yeah.
And also just, the lifts, like the male ballerinas lifting the girls, like the lighter you are. I mean, the prima ballerina, I think until like Misty Copeland, always had the same very small body type.
Yeah.
And Misty Copeland
was white. And so Misty Copeland kind of came in and is, if you don't know about her, she's this really amazing black ballerina. And she is, though, I will say,
she's still thin,
in a very small body, but she's muscular.
Muscular, right.
She's, I would say, like more toned. It seems like she has more muscle mass.
Yeah.
But still in a very,
thin.
very small body.
Right.
And, I think that there is still way more room to grow in many areas of diversity in all ways in the ballet field. But so that leads me to thinking of Lily, who was played by Mila Kunis.
Yeah. Tell me what you think about Lily, then I'll tell you what I think.
So kind of on the surface level, I think Lily is supposed to be so obviously like the Black
San
Swan.
Francisco. Her
right, she has a tattoo on her back, which is like these black wings.
Yeah.
Natalie Portman's character Nina is very childlike, doe-eyed, like
wears pink all the time.
Like wears pink, ballerina-y, and like Lily has her hair down.
Sorry to interrupt. I did find it interesting. The first scene we see of Natalie Portman walking into rehearsals, she had some wispies, which in the dance world means like your bun isn't totally hairsprayed. Like there's some stray pieces. And I thought that was interesting because she would not have wispies.
Yeah.
Like that version of her at that point would not. So I just thought that was, again, maybe no one thought of it, or maybe it was like sort of purposeful,
right?
As like she's unraveling already,
right?
I don't know. Anyway,
no, I mean that's a good point. Hair, I think, is so important. I think it again. It made it really characterized them as so different, but I think there is no way that they would ever allow, it's just not ballet etiquette to not have your hair in a bun.
I know, when she's dancing around with her hair down, like
flinging it around. You can't spot if you have your hair down. It's going to get in your partner's face.
Right, absolutely not. There's no way. But she's like San Francisco. That's what they were trying to depict.
Right. She's like cool. She's sexy. She's...
she eats a cheeseburger.
Right. And it's just, again, like to me, that's so unbelievable. But it's all like triggering Nina.
Yeah.
Right? Because Lily is the exact opposite of her.
And what she needs to be to play the role of the Swan Queen.
Right.
I don't think Lily was real. I think she was a hallucination the whole time.
I felt that way.
I didn't think that back in 2010.
No.
Now I do.
I was like kind of mind F-word in 2010 after seeing it and had a lot of questions about that. I think you are 100% right. I don't think like Lily exists at all.
No,
because I think
either.
In so many ways, Lily is this like version of Nina that she needs or wants or that she's trying to access. There's so many times when she's not really there. I think it's like when Nina is not herself, she is Lily.
100%.
So like Lily goes out to the bar. I don't think she was ever there, right?
No.
When they have sex, like that she was masturbating. I think, when she sees Lily having sex with Tomas and then he turns into, this swan creature.
Yeah.
Like again, like not, I don't think any of it's real. I think
you're
right.
I think and that didn't hit me till I was watching this at the end. I remember like back when it came out, the sex scene between them was like, whoa, that was like, oh, that big draw to see the movie. But now watching it, I'm like, I think the closer she gets to Lily, that's representing the further she's going into psychosis. We see like at the very early on in the movie when Nina is walking onto the subway,
Yep.
she thinks someone like laughs at her. She sees a weird face. Like we see some of that early on. These
little ghosts of Lily.
Right. Or like someone's face that I couldn't tell who it was, if it was Lily or that other girl she was feeling competitive with, that Michelle Trachtenberg looking girl.
And then it always morphs back into Nina, though.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I thought like this movie so artistically and beautifully depicted the descent into psychosis with some really classic things. Like, again, those little things that can happen at first where you have like a small break from reality. Was it real or was it just in my head? Okay. Like, I think I hear people laughing at me. Are they really or are they not? And then it just growing and growing and growing and growing. Like the mom's weird paintings, like laughing at her. I started to even wonder about like the scratches on her. Were those real? I think they were. I think she was doing that out of stress, but not realizing she was doing it. Oh, it's so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, such an artistic way to, I think, exactly what you just said, to kind of show psychosis and like the descent into it. I am even kind of remembering, which I had talked about before with the mom. Like, I know that I believe that they do authentically have a strange relationship
and mesh.
However, right, like then I think it kind of throws me to having all these questions about everything. Like, is the mom really that bad? Like, I don't know. Like, is all of this just like in her delusion now?
Some paranoia, yeah. And you even see like when Nina shows up late to a rehearsal. I think after their big night out, maybe, or who knows, big night out. And I wondered even about like the ecstasy, like. I don't know I don't think she was actually on drugs. I think that was the psychosis. Like she was starting to feel disconnected from herself. And she shows up, she thinks she sees Lily like filling in for her, and she runs after Tomas, like really tearful, like really paranoid. She's after me. She's trying to take my role. Like all of that, she's just unraveling. And at some point her mom tries to like stop her from performing, right? So at some point the mom like I think is trying to help.
I know, that's where I was confused.
Gets fuzzy,
right?
Because then mom's in the audience,
right?
Like fandom mom. But even like as she's performing as the Swans, like that last half hour of the movie, or however long it is, you just see the full descent, like in such a beautifully.
She becomes the Black Swan. I mean, it comes out of her skin. Like she performs it so amazingly well. Tomas is like giving her such good feedback after initially, right? Like the first scene, she has that fall as the White Swan. And I think even that I think that's real. I think that even catapults her further.
Like, because the stress that she's on. Like, it seems like she has this complicated relationship with her mom, this perfect storm of like an obsessive, neurotic personality with an eating disorder. And then we add on this level of stress, she has a psychotic break. I don't think she's depicting schizophrenia, which perhaps she goes on to develop, but schizophrenia would involve other things too, like her thought process, her affect, which is, we think of mood as like your own subjective experience about your emotions, and affect being what other people observe on you. There's negative symptoms associated with schizophrenia. She's not displaying any of that. She's really displaying a first break, which at that age, you don't really know. Is this a one-time thing? Is it stress-induced? Is it signs of an underlying bipolar disorder or signs of a schizophrenia? We don't know. But oh my God, it's so masterfully depicted.
So fun fact, I watched it on Amazon Prime. I rented it, and they give you like kind of a running, some facts on the side, like if you move the mouse and like who's on screen right now. So they always say the characters. So I've really enjoyed that sometimes. And they had shared that Natalie Portman recommended Mila Kunis for the role. She really wanted her to do it. She felt like she would be a perfect kind of counter to her. And then Mila Kunis, like, I guess, didn't even audition. Like they just kind of talked to her over Skype or something, and then they gave her the role. They thought she was a perfect fit.
And I know Natalie Portman said that she did a lot of ballet training. I think she was a ballerina like as a kid, not like professionally. But then there was a body double.
Yep.
Of course, because the ballet was amazing. Like those left-sided fouettes were just like, oh my God. But oh my gosh, I know. I feel like we should break down just a little bit before we wrap up the final show.
Yeah. Yeah. So prior to that, though, I was curious on your thoughts about why is Nina visiting Beth in the hospital, right? So Beth like jumps in front of a car,
attempts suicide,
and then she's in the hospital, like her body is damaged, which I think is just like the ultimate like I don't even know, like trauma on trauma, right? Like you had the suicide attempt and now your body is like
really
more
damaged.
even incapable of being who you identify as, which is a dancer, which now that you're not that, that's why I'm assuming, wanted to kind of end her life.
And she was feeling rejected by Tomas. And it's terrible.
So Nina brings her or gives her back the little items that she had stolen from
those
her.
weird little things she stole. I thought that was interesting.
And one of them being like, it looked a letter opener, but I'm assuming it was some kind of knife, maybe even for like point shoe stuff. Like it was some part of a
rough
kit
it up or something. Yeah.
And then she stabs herself in the
I think
neck
that was
with
all a
it.
hallucination. I hope it builds.
Building all of this like energy and I feel like just the watcher, like I'm all over the place. Yeah.
That was also super graphic. I do think she visited her initially when she brought her flowers and everything. I was really uncomfortable when she was picking up the blanket to look at her injuries. I felt like that was really a violation. And I think Nina so wanted to be Beth.
Yes.
And so maybe it was like seeing her potential future that was like haunting her. Maybe she felt guilty that now she's the Swan Queen and then Beth attempts suicide. Maybe she felt guilty. And then she did, even before Beth was ousted, there was that scene early in the movie where she like leaves her dressing room angry and Nina goes in and like takes all those trinkets. Kind of like a kleptomaniac, I don't know. I was like, are you trying to become her in like a real like creepy way?
I even wonder, and I know maybe it doesn't add up in the movie, but like, did Nina push Beth? Like, I mean, like in front of the car. I mean, it just seems like anything could be part of her psychotic break or not. And I think that's the fun of the movie is trying to kind of figure that out. But so she wakes up late. Mom hides the doorknob. She's in her room. Like she looks at the clock. It's way too late. So she gets ready. She like fights Mom.
And Mom said,
leave.
like, I've already called and told them you're not feeling well. Which I think, again, for Nina is like, what the F? Like, I've lived my whole life trying to be this person you want me to be.
Nothing will
now
stop
I'm
me.
here.
Yeah.
And now you call me out? Like, I still can't be good enough for you, Mom. Right? Like, it's just, ugh. So anyway, so she like rushes in, she gets ready. I was really interested in the fact that she did all of her own makeup. Is that true?
Yeah.
Like,
so I thought about this while I was watching it. So in like, I guess traditional ballet production too, you're not doing like, you always try to do like a dramatic face, dramatic eye, like in any, comp dancing, all of that stuff. But I, again, was a little triggered by the makeup because that, I've done that makeup before. You try to make the top of your face really white so it's like reflecting. You draw like really wide black eyeliner.
Yes.
So like under your eye all the way out and then over
the wing,
all the way out.
You wing it. Yep.
White in between.
Yep.
And that makeup is so sticky and uncomfortable.
And she had to like redo her makeup multiple times throughout the show. And the makeup and the costumes were so amazing.
Yeah.
When her eyes turn red as the black swan. But so she starts off as the white swan. Yep. She has the fall, which is devastating. And then her and Lily have the physical altercation. And she ends up
in the
like
dressing room.
stabbing her with the glass. Also, Lily was trying to take the role. Remember, Lily was like, Toma had said she was going to do it because Nina was late. Again, I don't think Lily's actually real, but that all depicts it so well.
Yeah.
And then she stabs her, drags her into the bathroom and just leaves her there. And I thought like she really killed her.
Yeah, there's blood coming out from under the door. She puts the towel on it. She goes and then performs, gets positive feedback, which I think was very interesting because the whole movie, it's like all she's getting is negative feedback. She's not sexy enough from the male partner and from Tomas. Like everyone's jealous of her. But then at the performance, like besides the fall, you hear all of this positive feedback from like her peers, people in the core, Tomas. It's really like nice that some people are asking her if she's okay after she fell.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering too. It's like that doesn't fit right
her view,
her previous view. That's like everyone's out to get her. Everyone's trying to take this role. It's like I wonder again. Like was that all in her head? There's some competition, of course.
Yeah.
But
or was she like unraveling and people are like, oh my God, are you okay? Like I think she's starting to appear psychotic. Like the way she carried herself was different. She walks up and kisses Thomas after the performance. Yeah. She dances differently. She the way they have her sort of sprout the wings as she's turning, it's like now she's psychotic, right? Like it was just so beautifully depicted. But she was hearing them laughing as they were switching. She was in the wings and the core was coming off stage and their faces kind of looked off and
distorted.
Squiggly. Yeah. She was upstage when she should have been downstage. She was confused. I thought they were asking her that out of caring, but because she was appearing more and more psychotic.
Yeah.
And then she gets back to her dressing room. There's no blood coming.
There's no body.
There's no body.
There is the glass though.
There is the glass. And she looks and she stabbed herself. And that's when, at least watching it again this time, I was like, oh, Lily was never real. It's like a depiction of her wrestling with that part of herself. Yeah. And then she's carries on, puts on the white swan makeup again, goes and does the beautiful performance at the end, and then quite literally jumps to her death.
Right.
And at the very end, as she's dying, I think she says, it was perfect or I was perfect or something. And I was like, oh my God, just floored.
Yep.
Just floored. The lengths you go to achieve perfection.
I mean, it does
drives you mad.
I feel like at both times that I've watched it, I'm always left a little speechless. Besides feeling unwell and triggered. But yeah, I had a lot of questions, which it seems like the glass was real on the floor, but I don't know. I mean, obviously, if you get stabbed, I just don't see you performing
But again,
ballet. But
right. But also, she is the person who can sustain anorexia for that period of time.
The pain, yeah.
Right. I don't even think she feels it.
Yeah.
And they even kind of show that, but where her wound doesn't grow until she's finally done dancing. God, what a movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think it touches on so much stuff and so much toxic energy that is in the ballet world. I think it talks about also a psychotic break, mom and daughter relationships. It's
predatory,
predatory relationships.
Touches on so much, and it's so artistically beautiful. Yeah, it was a really. I don't know if I'd say it was a pleasure to watch again because it's really disturbing. But it's amazing movie.
I mean, for me, I think I didn't quite enjoy dance while I was kind of competitive at that level, in high school. And I think I really started to enjoy dance again when I stepped away, from the ballet world. I mean, I think that's not a universal maybe experience, but I think if something doesn't become fun anymore and it's not fulfilling and it's just all work and pain, I think it's time to move on to something else. And I think it's really hard for dancers, as that's your identity.
It does become such a big
for so many people. We don't become professionals.
I know, vast majority.
It's just really hard to do that.
Did you ever have guest teachers be raise your hand if you hope to be a professional dancer someday? I feel they were always asking us that, and I always raised my hand.
I think it was just I feel we were some of my instructors at some places. That was the assumption. When we started, I mean, this is kind of a horrifying thing to share, but when we started Point, I think I was probably 11.
Oh my gosh, your little feet are still developing.
We were not allowed to use padding.
No.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with Point, so in the Point shoes, actually, same with me. I just started later, but you can put wool. Or buy these gel
rubber,
pads.
Yeah, there's all sorts of things.
But all these pads in the very tip of your shoes, so your toes have some padding. But you're right. Same with me now that I'm thinking about it. You weren't allowed to use padding because that's not what the professionals
they wanted to
do.
get you a real feel for the shoe and build up your toe muscles.
Your calluses. I remember I used to cut off dead skin in between rehearsals.
You weren't allowed to get a pedicure because you didn't want any soft skin.
Right. Yep. If I would get one, I would say don't remove the calluses.
I would I sneakily brought in cotton balls and put them in my shoe. It was so painful.
So painful. It's the worst.
Oh my gosh. I think dancing now as an adult and doing like other forms of dance, like tap, I feel like the joy has like returned and it's fun and it's nice. But I think, I do follow, her name is Isabel Boylston, I think. She's a prima ballerina for the American Ballet Theater. I like her content. I mean, I will say, like, she is a small-bodied ballerina, pretty traditional speaking. She's an amazing dancer. And, I'd like to think and hope that the ballet world is making some efforts to be more inclusive and to be, like, safer for everybody. I'm not in it anymore. I can't speak to that. And I feel like we said a lot of, like, negative, bad things about it today, which I think that's just the reality. But I also am, like, hopeful that there are wonderful companies with wonderful instructors and like and better PT and like
right. But I think it's cutthroat.
I think it is,
and at least the way it's depicted in this movie, very cutthroat. So I'm just thinking, like, if you and I experienced some of that on like such a local dance school level, like imagine what it is at like the New York City Ballet, right? Wow. So is there anything else we wanted to touch on about this film?
No, I'm glad that it's behind us.
I feel like it deserves to be called a film, not a movie. Yeah. All right. Well, this was fun. I'm also glad it's behind us. Thank you all for tuning in. If you could please rate, review, and subscribe, that would be great. And we will see you next time with Succession.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
This podcast and its contents are a copyright of Analyzed Scripts, all rights reserved. Any redistribution or reproduction of part or all of the contents in any form is prohibited. Unless you want to share it with your friends and rate, review, and subscribe, that's fine. All stories and characters discussed are fictional in nature. No identification with actual persons, living or deceased, places, buildings, or products is intended or should be inferred. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The podcast and its contents do not constitute professional, mental health, or medical advice. Listeners might consider consulting a mental health provider if they need assistance with any mental health problems or concerns. As always, please call 911 or go directly to your nearest emergency room for any psychiatric emergencies. Thanks for listening and see you next time.